referred to as an EA HD project. Now this could be anything from Dead Space to SSX Tricky. Oh god, I would love SSX Tricky. But if you look on VentureBeat, they've already kind of half confirmed in that sort of, you know, we're a games journalist and we know what we're talking about sort of way, that the EA HD project is apparently a Mass Effect Trilogy HD remake. Whether that's a full-on remake the likes of Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Resident Evil 2, or whether it's just a texture pack upgrade, kind of more like, you know, Prototype 2 or something like that, I would still take any Mass Effect in the current generation or on new systems whatsoever. I think you put that thing out as a trilogy just to remind the vast majority of people why the Mass Effect IP used to mean so much in the first place. I mean, Mass Effect 3 came out in 2012. There's people that have grown up, children, teenagers, that have no idea why Mass Effect was such a massive deal in the first place. And I just think that you need to get it back out there. Hopefully the EA HD project is that, and you can, you know, we can actually start to play Mass Effect 2 and 3 again. And to be honest, Mass Effect 3, if you add on all of that DLC, it's not that bad. That game suffered more from being hampered by marketing whims and taking essential storylines and characters and segmenting them off for DLC, rather than if you just take all of it as one go, the Mass Effect trilogy is still pretty damn good. So yeah, first off, think of N7 Day, think of every year, and EA, just get back to the drawing board and announce a Mass Effect HD trilogy. You've done that with Burnout, and it got all the way back to the top of the UK charts, proving that there is still value in those IPs. Put Mass Effect back out into the wild and just see how it goes. I kind of guarantee people will love it all over again. Onto how things can go next generation though, and like I said, looking at that Unreal Tech engine, looking at all that gorgeous lighting, rocks and everything else, I just think that you need to soft reboot Mass Effect. I don't think you can do anything with Shepard and all that sort of thing. I don't think you can do anything with the Riders anymore. For as much as Mass Effect Andromeda had the right idea in terms of, you know, you take Shepard's tail over here and we branch it off over this way, we're going to do a whole different set of characters, different galaxy, and that just, you know, gives us some breathing room to do something unique and special. They didn't do anything that was more worthwhile, and the only sci-fi visual that's associated with Andromeda comes from the very first planet, and it's just more floating rocks. It didn't really feel like anything in Andromeda was a worthwhile distinction from the original trilogy. For me, I would make a complete fresh start. Give the Mass Effect IP to a new team of developers, kind of like the Final Fantasy VII remake. Keep some of the key personnel on, let Casey Hudson be a, you know, someone that you can go to as a consultant, like a Hideo Kojima on the side kind of guy, but give the main IP to a new team, to a youthful team that maybe grew up as fans of Mass Effect overall and have now joined BioWare. Because to be honest, most of the key personnel from BioWare have moved on to other projects. Casey Hudson left and came back. Original Mass Effect 2 writer Drew Karpyshyn is now over at a different dev called Archetype, and he was out there saying that you know, working at Archetype reminds him of the early days of BioWare. He literally said that he can feel the magic in the air. And that's something that hasn't been associated with BioWare or Mass Effect in quite some time. Magic, genuine magic, genuinely feeling like you were looking into another universe altogether, something that was brimming with possibility. One of the best things about Mass Effect, one of the reasons that I champion it as sort of video game Star Trek, is literally because of the sheer variety on display, the amount of diversity across all the different alien races, the fact that you can just go to the Citadel and lose a couple of hours just talking to people, just having fun, getting lost in conversations and different side quests and things like that, things that make it feel like a real living, breathing, you know, interconnected galaxy of races. That's one of the things that you can hold up. I don't think anyone else has done it quite so well since Mass Effect, and if they were going to lead with something that makes Mass Effect feel like the next generation version of itself, then double down on all those elements. I would totally just give the Mass Effect IP to a new team of developers, just see what they would come in with. You know, if they grew up as fans and then joined BioWare later on, assumedly they would have some idea of where the story should go from the fan perspective, but maybe you also have some personnel on the dev side that can help them flesh that out. Ultimately, I just think Mass Effect needs a new lease on life. It needs to be something that comes along and reminds us of the first time that we saw the gameplay back before 2007, and we've I remember the first time we saw the dialogue trees, just seeing someone be able to interact with another NPC, improvising conversations on the fly. I know it might seem like the most rote thing in the world now, but being able to have a fully fledged live conversation with, you know, an alien that looked like Rex was just genuinely incredible, and just felt like I can't wait to get in there and just see what happens and forge my own path through this universe with a custom character. Next up, another massive thing is gameplay. Obviously, over time, Mass Effect became more blockbuster, it became more action-focused. I would assume on behalf of EA, but you never know. I mean, I also have to assume that people inside BioWare wanted it to become bigger and more bombastic and more over the top, because Mass Effect 3 was just a full-on action cover shooter. It's weird if you go back to the original Mass Effect, throwing grenades is on the back button, and the vast majority of the things that you do in that game, you know, hinge on conversations and interaction and exploration, whereas Mass Effect 2 and 3, and especially Andromeda, are full-on action games. If you read into the Kotaku deep dive on Mass Effect Andromeda, that team were literally told, forget about story and focus on multiplayer, which is pretty much anathema to why people care about Mass Effect in the first place. As far as I'm concerned, it needs to be conversation, interaction, you know, dynamic exploration and things like that first and foremost, and combat and whatever. Those high-octane thrills need to be put to the back of the experience as much as possible. I will totally champion Mass Effect 2's combat, for me, as my personal favorite. I think it's just the tightest. I really like the feel of combat in that game. And those things are fine for side missions and just getting through and having fun with the game overall. But I want to be able to have those conversations. I want to get lost with a certain crew. I want to drink in a whole, you know, gorgeous vistas of different planets and different ship designs and alien designs and things like that. It just needs to come back after this much time and land with a purpose all over again. Essentially, we want dialogue, options, and causality first, and gunplay and action second. Those two sides of the coin I feel flipped as the Mass Effect series rolled out, and I want to get back to that idea of you controlling your agency throughout the entire game. For me, Mass Effect was about the conversations and just talking and living in that space, more than it was actually shooting aliens in the face. My overall takeaway here is that Mass Effect still matters. I think for as much as both BioWare and the Mass Effect IP have, you know, had a pretty disastrous run across the last 7 to 8 years, there's something there that is immortally valuable. And whenever we cover Mass Effect on the website, or whenever we do a video on it on this channel, it still attracts so many different people. I think that even if EA only end up putting out an HD remaster, that would still be enough to rekindle the flames, to remind people why this IP matters and do something with it going forward. I want to see more Mass Effect, and I want to see a team with the budget of EA and hopefully the potential BioWare magic of a veteran team of developers take full advantage of something that looks as gorgeous as Unreal Engine 5 and the next generation of hardware. Hopefully it's been long enough that the sour taste of Mass Effect 3's ending and Mass Effect Andromeda overall has gone away. Whether it's aged out or whether it's just been long enough that we're actually welcoming of a new Mass Effect, I do want to believe that it is time for things to come around again next generation. So for now, that's been my thoughts on how BioWare should resurrect, bring back, and
It is Monday, April 13th, 2020. My name is Philip DeFranco. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today are updates to the Tara Reid, Joe Biden situation. And a few weeks ago, we talked about this in more detail, but to kind of bring you up to speed, a quick TLDR. Tara Reid is a woman who worked in Biden's Senate office in 1993. Reid was also one of several women who spoke out publicly last year and said Biden had touched or kissed them in ways that they were not comfortable with. But then on March 24th of this year, a podcast clip is posted, and there, Reid spoke publicly for the first time about an alleged assault by Biden in 1993 that went beyond unwanted touching. Reid claiming that Biden had pushed her up against a wall, penetrated her with his fingers, and said that she was nothing. Shortly after this, Biden's team issued a statement denying the accusation. And with this story, there's tons of different moving parts, some of which calling into question the accuracy of Reid's statements, the changing narratives, but mainly, one of the major elements of this story was the fact that most of mainstream media was largely silent on this topic. We talked about it in the previous coverage. There was a massive debate and also backlash, people wondering why NBC, CNN, the New York Times, and others weren't reporting on the allegation. A number of people on Twitter claiming that this was because of political bias in favor of Biden and against Bernie Sanders. But you also had other journalists saying that it could be due to the issue that people that write about these kind of stories for the mainstream outlets have to be incredibly careful. As one argued that clip from the podcast was posted with little context, few follow-up questions, and no additional reporting, and adding that talking to witnesses and fact-checking key details is crucial to reporting sexual assault allegations. And it's this aspect of the story I want to talk about today because the update that we're seeing is that mainstream media is providing coverage. And so the way that this went down is on Thursday we saw Reid file a formal criminal complaint regarding the alleged assault with the police in Washington, D.C. According to reports, the complaint does not mention Biden by name, but she has confirmed that it is about him. Now, very notably here, the statute of limitations of that alleged incident has passed, and that's something that Reid acknowledged in a tweet saying, "I filed a police report for safety reasons only," with Reid also telling Business Insider in an interview on Friday that part of the reason that she filed the report was due to harassment she received after speaking out last year, saying that she wanted to simply have documentation in case anything happened, and adding, "I filed it because I had been harassed so badly badly last April, I also wanted to make it clear that I would be willing to go under oath or cooperate with any law enforcement regarding it because it did happen, even if it was 26 years ago. And following that, yesterday we saw a couple of mainstream media outlets reporting on this story, this including NBC, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. All three outlets said that they had interviewed Reed and begun investigating her story after Halper's podcast aired. They also spoke to people who worked for Biden around the same time, as well as those who Reed said that she had told about the alleged incident. And of note there, Reed's brother and an anonymous friend had previously confirmed that she had told them about the accusations, but also yesterday, all three of these outlets said that they spoke to another person who confirmed Reed had told them about the alleged assault. And finally, all three also reported that multiple Biden staffers told them they had never seen or heard of a complaint Reed said she filed in the Senate in 1993, with other staffers also telling reporters that they had not heard of the incident or experienced similar behaviors towards women. And regarding the complaint she said she filed, she claimed it detailed harassment but not the assault. And here, both the Times and the Post said they were unable to track down the complaint, while NBC reported that federal law at that time would have required a hearing by a board of independent officers for a sexual harassment complaint, but no such process was initiated by Reed's complaint. Now with this story, one of the things being touched on is not only the conveying of information, but how you convey that. And the how here really got the New York Times in hot water. In the original New York Times piece, they wrote, "No other allegation about sexual assault surfaced in the course of reporting, nor did any former Biden staff members corroborate any details of Miss Reed's allegation." And adding, "The Times found no pattern of sexual misconduct by Mr. Biden beyond the hugs, kisses, and touching that women previously said made them uncomfortable." Which, I will say, may be in fact the worst possible way you could have framed